All right, welcome everyone to today's Google Search Central SEO office hours. My name is John Mueller. I'm a search advocate at Google in Switzerland, and part of what we do are these office hour hangouts, where people can join in and ask their questions all around their website and Google search. A bunch of things were submitted already on YouTube. We can go through some of that, but maybe we can start with some of the folks here live. And some people already have their hands raised. And I think one of them dropped down. Maybe I'll just start with you. I don't know where you were, Jason, but I'll just start with you. We'll get everyone as well.
Oh, cool. Thank you. So kicking it off, we have a key button as part of our mobile site navigation, and we're looking to change it from, a static button, which always links to the same URL, to dynamic based on some elements of the page the user is on in order to, make our experiences more relevant, bring users closer to our key conversion pages. So I've proposed a change which would update the button anchor text dynamically, but it really pissed off our designers by potentially increasing the button size to accommodate the new text. Then I proposed, a change to the acceptance criteria, resizing the text, based on the available button real estate, thereby pissing off my accessibility folks. So, given all of that context, my question to you is the global title attribute an adequate replacement for anchor text, or should we perhaps change the button to be a graphic and use, dynamic alt text? What would your recommendation be here?
My understanding is we use the title plus the anchor text essentially together. So if you have things in the title that kind of cover the part that you're missing in the anchor text, that should work out. I'm not 100% sure, but this is probably also something you could test with like a made-up word that you put as a title attribute, and wait for a while for everything to get indexed and see how that gets picked up. But I'm pretty sure that we just combine those two together.
Okay, cool. That really helps. Thank you for the context. Also, how important from an SEO standpoint would it be for the dynamic nature of the button to be based on the page content rather than like personalization through using cookies?
So we wouldn't use cookies, so we wouldn't see what would happen there. That's kind of the one thing. So essentially, for Googlebot, it would look like it's always based on the page content, because we wouldn't be able to give you a cookie, so you wouldn't be able to keep any personalization for that. We would essentially always see the same thing that a non-cookied user would see.
Okay, perfect. I just needed that for my technology folks. So thank you.
Cool. All right, Roshan.
Hi, John.
Hi.
So, John, I joined a couple of months back to ask a question on e-commerce product ranking. Right. So, my business is around green teas, herbal teas, and I don't think you'll be able to recall as much, but just to give you some background. So we have a small blog section. We do useful blogs, and we are happy with the way they work in terms of, and it's kind of directly proportional to the amount of effort we put in. So then that ranks right away. More or less, our experience is that it's related to the X amount stuff in the article. So we try to kind of collate all the information possible from by sourcing out information from all research papers and authoritative websites. So that is working well. My product pages do not rank, and this is the question I asked you last time. So your one piece of suggestion was to focus on internal linking. So for example, if we have a blog on weight loss green teas, for example, so we're only linking to that very product itself, because whenever we write a blog, we have this on our agenda to only cater to one topic, one kind of product. And we don't link to random products. We link to just one product from one blog. We don't have a huge blog section. I think there will be like around 10 to 12 blog pieces, but all of them work well for us. We have product structure data. In the search pages, I can see that it's correctly picking up the reviews, quantity, item, price, everything. And we have enough amount of text, especially compared to the product pages that are ranking. We may not have as many backlinks to our product pages, but when I do an A to A comparison of other websites, I don't see that a lot of them have backlinks. So at this point, I'm kind of lost to at some point the is going to. I need your help in that direction.
Okay, it's very hard to understand you because you're breaking up in between. So I think what you're asking is you have a blog section with blog posts, which is ranking appropriately, and you have product pages on your site as well, and those product pages are not ranking as well as you would like. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so I think the aspect with internal linking that you talked about, I think that continues to be important. It sounds like you're already doing some of that. One of the things also to keep in mind is that for some types of queries, we try to understand what the intent is behind the query. And we try to figure out if someone is looking for information about a product or if they're looking to buy a product. And then we might try to show one kind of page or a different kind of page. And it might be, I don't know your queries and your site, but it might be that we're interpreting the queries that are landing on those pages as more almost like information-seeking queries, that people want information about a specific kind of product rather than that they're looking to buy one specific product. And that's something that you can't really change on your side because it's essentially based on what we assume people are trying to find. And the best thing that you can do there is just to make it as easy as possible for people to get to your products, so that you have a clear call to action on your blog post, for example, so that it's easier for people who land on the informational blog post to move on to the product page as well if they want to buy something. And it might be that a lot of these people are just looking for information, and they're not looking to buy, and then they might not follow that link. But that's kind of something that's almost a bit out of our control, I guess, so what people are actually looking for. With regards to maybe the competition that's also appearing in search, I think it's tricky to simplify it to like just the number of words on a page and the number of links that these articles have, because we use lots and lots of factors in search. And it's something that sometimes just takes a lot of time to be built up. And sometimes it takes a lot of work to build that relationship with your audience, to make it so that, I don't know, they're happy to go back to your website, that they also recommend your website, that it's not so much like only the links that you placed are visible for your website, but actually people are buying things and they're reviewing things on your website. They're giving you information, and they're recommending your business, your products to other people. And that sometimes just takes a lot of time.
Okay, so John, like interlinking from a dedicated blog page to that product itself and having a call to action are implicitly different, right? Different suggestions. So by CTA, do you mean we could utilize something graphical, a button?
Sure. I mean, if people are going to your blog post to find more information about this kind of product, then it's either that these people have a different intent, they just want to find information, or they need some simple way to actually be able to go off and buy that product. And sometimes that's something that you can do with a graphical element. It's not so much an SEO aspect that you're doing, but more that, well, your pages have visibility, and how do you convert that visibility into something that you find valuable, that people go to a product page and buy something.
Okay. Also, no, I kind of understand that. So also at the same time, speaking to the part that you mentioned, that the most popular query for us, for our business, would be green tea. And every time we Google something like that, we get a mix of search results. Some are blogs around green teas, and there are a couple of product pages and collection pages. And I have in focus those product and collection pages, and that's what I am trying to compete in that very instance. And
Yeah.
they don't stand out to me as some page. They don't even have as much content as we do. So but they are popular. They are popular in the sense that they are a bigger website. We know for a fact that people buy a lot of stuff from these websites. So could it be that it's with time and with continued effort of and whatever you mentioned, it can get to that stage without anything that is kind of coming across as a gap right now in my strategy?
I think it can, but for a query like just green tea, I suspect the competition is going to be very, very hard. So that's something where you can make a very good page about green tea, but if the competition is just so hard, you are almost never going to be visible. And for instances like that, yeah, I mean, my recommendation is usually to find more specific queries, more specific kinds of products, where you can stand out, where there's less competition, which might be, I don't know, some organic type of green tea, or a special I don't know, shape, or leaf type, or I don't know. I don't know the topic, but something that is kind of unique, where you can stand out. And then you can start there and build up your visibility until you're the most visible one for that very specific type. That type of query doesn't get enough traffic or comparable traffic to just green tea, but it gets enough for your business. And from there, you can kind of build out and take the next more specific type of tea and add that as well, and kind of work on expanding things like that. So that's usually the direction I would recommend there. Instead of trying to kind of, as a new company, take on existing competition and go into a very intense and competitive market, find something small where you can stand out.
Actually, I'm using that strategy when it comes to the blog. So we go for niche queries and we rank, but I've also targeted very competitive queries and we rank, right? So sometimes we are ranking ahead of websites like WebMD and Healthline, right? About a benefit and loss query. I just don't know what it is that I could do to push my product pages higher. So my product pages do get some visibility, like they're on the 5th and 6th page. John, I'm sorry, I'm eating into everybody's time here, but I'm kind of lost here. So do you also think that the number of reviews that we are gathering over time will be a factor, or is that a direct or indirect ranking signal?
It's not something direct that we would take into account, but it's like if you're seeing that people are engaging with your product, then usually that's a good sign, and that means that other signals might be built up over time.
Okay, I'll try to assimilate that information. Okay. Thank you so much, John. Thank you.
Sure. Good luck. Cool. Andrew.
Yeah. Hello, John.
Hi.
Well, after it was announced that the page experience update rolled out, one of our sites lost 20% of organic traffic. Core Vitals are not very bad. They are in the orange zone. Is it safe to suggest that the site will regain traffic after we will fix the issues with Core Web Vitals? And also, how long could it take? Do we need to wait some, maybe another huge update? And how do things in general work with Core Web Vitals and the algorithm from this point of view?
So you saw the change like immediately after it was finished, or when did you see the change?
Yes, after it was announced that the page experience update rolled out, like it was completed.
Okay,
The same day.
I don't think that would be related. So the reason I don't think that would be related is because we started rolling this update out, I think, in July, and it was finished at the end of August. But the rollout, it was on a per-page basis, essentially. That means if we saw that your website was slow for Core Web Vitals, you would see a gradual change over time, and from July until
Not
August.
the exact.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you see an exact drop on that date, it seems like it's probably something else. So I don't think that would be from the Core Web Vitals.
OK, and also the gain would be also gradually.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. And the updates take place automatically. So it's something in Search Console, you will see the data is always delayed, I think, 28 days. But it's like gradually updated. It's not that it has to wait for a bigger update.
Yes. OK. Thank you.
OK. Cool. Kamal.
Hi. I have a question about the e-commerce website again.
Okay.
We're going to create content based on the keyword suggestions auto-complete by Google to include more content around the one main topic. For example, the main topic or transactional intent is smartphones, and we're going to create tech-related contents around the smartphone, like blog posts. Should we really need to create separate contents for separate keywords around one topic? Or is just combining all different keywords in one intent and optimize our content around this intent?
You can do either way. It's more of a strategic decision, I think. In general, what you are balancing is making pages that are specific for individual topics, and making pages that are more general, but where you have fewer pages. So you're kind of balancing many pages versus fewer pages. And if you have fewer pages, generally those few pages tend to be a little bit stronger. Whereas if you have a lot of pages, then it's like the value is spread out a little bit more. So if there are specific topics where the competition is stronger, then you want to have very strong pages. So maybe fewer pages. If you are targeting areas where the competition is not so strong, then maybe having more pages is fine. So that's kind of the balance that you would try to take there, where if you're starting out, probably having fewer pages is a good idea so that you can be as strong as possible in that area. And then over time, as you see, like we're very good here, you can split off individual pages for more niche topics. OK.
In that case, I'm going to create a few stronger pages on one intent. And what should I do to make Google prefer the best content for others to the main intent? For example, I want Google prefer Samsung smartphone transactional intent to my stronger blog post. How can I handle it?
You can't give any priority for them, but you can help with internal linking. So within your website, you can really highlight the pages that you want to have highlighted more, and make sure that they're really well linked internally. And maybe the pages you don't find that important, make sure that they're a little bit less well linked internally.
So you mentioned I have to give some call to action button to smartphone, for example, category pages, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's something usually with internal linking, you can think of it as the important pages you would have linked from your home page, and the less important pages are linked from like a category or subcategory page, something like that. so that when we look at your site, we see, oh, the home page is very important. And the home page points at these 5 pages. So these 5 pages are like almost as important as the home page. And then from there, kind of the value is spread out. And that's kind of a way that you can help us to figure out which pages you think are important. It doesn't mean we will always follow that, but it's a good way to give that kind of information.
Should I give links on all these different keyword-related blog posts?
How do you mean?
I mean giving link to the smartphone page, for example, product page, from that blog post. All of them are important?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I use canonical URL to these blog posts, or is it important?
The canonical URL is important if you have multiple URLs that show the same content. So if you have tracking URLs, for example, within your blog or something like that, then with the canonical link element, you can tell us what is the primary page there. But for normal website where you're just linking to different things, usually you wouldn't critically need it. It's a good best practice to have, but it's not that you're going to get any SEO bonus out of it.
OK, thank you very much.
Cool. All right, Alejandro.
Hi, John. Yes,
Hi.
we are planning to release the Spanish version for the US market. And we already have a multi-language website in around 92 countries and 70 languages. However, when it comes about US, this Google.com, and we have a lot of traffic coming from brand keywords, mostly. That's the biggest amount of traffic. And we have some concerns about the impact of this. We have a comprehensive hreflang solution in the sitemaps, and also page language for each page that we are going to release by the CMS. However, we still had this kind of shyness to go live, since probably the traffic to the brand keywords, that is the majority, could be messed up in the search results. Do you have any additional advice that we should consider regarding this opening up for the Spanish speaker in the US?
So are you seeing any issues at the moment, or is it more kind of with regards to future plans?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that some products, and they don't have any translation. The brand name is the same. So probably we will have some cases that it show up more traffic to the in results to the English than to Spanish, or vice versa. So our biggest concern is if we should consider additional technical requirements, or maybe make some kind of variations to the Spanish content to be sure that they position by itself with some other relevance than the content in English.
OK. But do you have the Spanish content already, or is it?
No,
planned?
It's planned to go live in October.
OK. So I think the things that you mentioned, they sound great. So that seems like a good approach. One thing I would try to do, I don't know if it's possible in your specific case, it would be to add a JavaScript-based banner to these pages to try to recognize if the wrong user is on the wrong version of the page. So if that's something, I don't know if that's possible here, but to recognize maybe the browser language or the user's location with JavaScript. And if you can tell that they're on the wrong version, then show a little banner on top saying, hey, we have a better version for you. You can follow the link here. Using a banner like that means that Google will still be able to index all of these pages, but you can guide users to the appropriate one a little bit faster. If you were to do it on the server side, for example, with a redirect, then the problem could be that Googlebot never sees the other version because it always gets redirected. And the banner is kind of like a backup plan, where usually hreflang will help. Maybe geo-targeting is set up. But the banner is kind of like, well, we can't guarantee that only the right users go to these pages. So we will catch them and then help them to find the right ones.
Yeah, we already have implemented geo-targeting for example, the .com, and for example, now I'm in Sweden, so the traffic goes directly to the Swedish market. But when it comes about US, it's just one version. I mean, one site, and usually people is using the web browser. So maybe from the web browser and the interface in Google might change the results.
Yeah. I would just assume that sometimes users get to the wrong page, because it's everything around geo-targeting and hreflang is sometimes a bit flexible with regards to how we recognize it and how users are set up. So that's mostly why I would recommend kind of the banner as a backup. But otherwise, I think you understand the topic, and you probably have it set up so that it'll work.
Yeah. Thank you for that site. I just have an additional question. It's merely about Google Search Console. Due to some kind of migration and legacy, we cannot make the forcing the URL rewriting from the URL without trailing slash and with trailing slash. So we still have this duality, even though, well, the page is canonical and all the text is OK. But when it comes about Search Console, I wanted to have a property, for example, mydomain.com/SE by Sweden without the trailing slash. But then, since I already have a property in Search Console with the trailing slash, it's forcing me just to use that one, and I cannot see or create a separate property. Is it something that I should just remove all the properties and go and scratch from zero to do this?
I don't think you can do that, because without the trailing slash, it's essentially, from our point of view, it's a file that's on the root domain. And with the trailing slash, then it's a folder, and then you can add it as a property. So you wouldn't be able to add just like /SE without a trailing slash.
OK. Thank you very much for this information.
Cool. OK, let me go through some of the submitted questions, and I'll get back to the rest of you with your hands raised. Oh my gosh, so many, in a little bit later as well. Let's see. The first one is, we're a news publisher and experiencing an issue where Google shows the wrong publish date in the search results. And it kind of goes, we have like everything set up properly. And on the article, we have X minutes ago or something like that in the text. What can we do there? So when it comes to dates in the search results, we try to find the date that essentially aligns the best across all of the signals that we have. And that means we look at things like the structured data, which it sounds like you're already using to understand what the date might be. But we also look at the page text. And if we can't recognize that the same date and time is used across multiple locations, then we have to try to figure out which one of these might be the most relevant. And in particular, if you have something just like as a date, like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago, or 5 hours ago, or yesterday as a date in the visible part of the article, then that's something we wouldn't be able to kind of match, because we don't really know exactly what date you mean with that. So that's something where, if you can give us the date and the time in a visible way in the article, together with the structured data, then it's a lot more likely that we'll be able to actually use that. So that's kind of the recommendation I would have here. It's definitely not the case that we just blindly ignore the structured data, but we need to make sure that whatever we pick is kind of supported by the rest of the page. And it's important that you watch out for things like time zones. That's one that we often see where things go wrong. Yeah, time zones, essentially. And with regards to the visible date, it's not so much that it needs to be in exact format, but it should be something that we can recognize. So those are kind of the directions that I would look at there. In recent week, we've seen a huge increase in direct spam traffic on some of our websites coming from all over the world using Chrome as a browser. This spam traffic is very slow. We're a bit concerned about Chrome metrics that are used to evaluate page speed and our rankings. Is Google aware of this? Is there something that we can do? So I don't know. Like we get lots of weird, or we see lots of weird spam traffic on the web over time, and we have a fairly good understanding of that. And the way that I understand it with regards to the Core Web Vitals, what we use for kind of the what is it in the Chrome experience, Chrome user experience report data, there are certain requirements that we watch out for, and we almost certainly also filter out for kind of the usual spam traffic that's also out there as well. So from that point of view, I wouldn't expect this to cause any problems. If you're really worried about it and you have some data that you can send me, then I'm happy to pass that on to the Chrome team so that they can take a look. But I would not assume that this would cause any problems. We see all kinds of weird spam traffic all the time, and our systems are pretty tuned to avoid that kind of thing. I manage one of the largest classified sites in the country. We have several category pages that list only 3 to 4 products. They're receiving traffic from search, but I know that users won't be satisfied with our page. I'm thinking in a line of no indexing such pages. I know it might hurt traffic numbers, but in the long run, users overall might be more satisfied with our site. What are your thoughts on this strategy? Ultimately, that's more of a strategic decision, I think, than a pure SEO one. So that's something where, I don't know. It's kind of like the kind of thing where I'd say, well, try it out and see what happens. It's always tricky when you have pages that are currently being shown in search. And if you no-index them or if you remove them, then obviously those pages won't be shown in search anymore. And then it's almost open, like, will Google pick other pages from my website and show those instead? And it's possible that we would be able to pick up other pages and show them instead. It might also happen that we just say, well, we don't have anything good from this website. We'll take other websites and show those instead. And that's, I think, kind of the risk that you have to take. And sometimes it's also a matter of letting it settle down. So if you have a large website and you want to kind of try this out, and you feel very strongly that users going to those pages are going to have a bad experience, then maybe take a section of your site that gets sufficient traffic so that you can measure it and try it out and see what happens. My feeling overall is, like, I suspect some will work, some won't work that well. I would almost try it out. I mean, there are other things that you could do here, which might involve things like changing things in the UI to make a call to action a little bit clearer. So if you're already ranking like that, and you know people tend to want to go somewhere specific on your website with those kind of queries, make it easier to get there. And that might also be an option. But it feels like something you'd almost need to test. What's up with EAT? Is that determined through quality backlinks or more on the subject and thoroughness of the pages? So EAT is an abbreviation for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And it's something that comes from our quality rater guidelines. And the quality rater guidelines are not kind of like a handbook to Google's algorithms, but rather something that we give folks who are reviewing changes that we make in our algorithms. And especially EAT is specific to certain kinds of sites and certain kinds of content. So that from that point of view, it's not something where I would say Google has an EAT score, and it's based on 5 links plus this plus that. It's more something that our algorithms over time, like we try to improve them. Our quality raters try to review our algorithms, and they do look at these things. So there might be some overlap here, but it's not that there's a technical factor that's involved, which would kind of take specific elements and use them as an SEO factor. But it is definitely something I would look into, especially if you're running sites that map into the broad area where Google has mentioned EAT in the quality rater guidelines. An online pharmacy I work for is going through a complete rebranding and raised some interesting questions. In terms of EAT, again, OK. For a site operating in different countries and languages, is it better to get an English-speaking clinician with a lot of authority to review your content and then translate it, or get a local clinician with less authority to do it? I would not kind of base this decision purely on SEO aspects, but rather I would try to figure out what would actually end up with better content on your side. So that's kind of the direction I would head here. I don't think our algorithms are tuned to kind of trying to recognize English-speaking medical people rather than other languages, but rather we try to figure out where it makes sense to pull this information and then to show it. With regards to less authority and more authority, I think on the one hand, you can't really quantify it, so that's always tricky. On the other hand, it's definitely also the case that some markets are large, and it's important to be very strong there. And some markets are just smaller, where it's obvious that there will be a difference compared to the people who are interacting in a larger market. Is Google better at understanding sarcasm in 2021, or should you still try to avoid it? For example, the sentence, Silden, Phil, gosh, I can't pronounce it. Some medical name works for jet lag if you're a hamster is correct medically, because no study has been run on humans. But is there a risk that it confuses Google semantically? I would say there's definitely a risk that we misunderstand things like that, or that we don't understand when there is sarcasm on a page. And especially if it's something where it's really critical for you to get the right message across to Google and to all users, then I would make sure that it's as clear as possible. So maybe in cases where you're talking about medical information, maybe try to avoid sarcasm. If you're writing about, I don't know, an entertainment topic or something like that, then that's probably less of an issue. But especially if it's really critical information, then really make sure that it's as easy as possible to understand. My website is on nonwww, which is ranked #1 on Google, both pages and posts. I want to switch it to nonwww to the I want to switch from the non-dubdub version to the dubdub version. What's the best way to do it without affecting SEO? And is there any risk of changing kind of when you do that? So the best way to do this is to follow the normal site move guidelines that we have. And essentially, everything is outlined there. So with regards to tracking the URLs that you have previously, to kind of the following through with the redirect and making sure that all of that is set up properly, I would follow those things. My feeling is that overall, a move within the same domain where you're just changing essentially a different subdomain is something that is fairly unproblematic and should happen essentially fairly smoothly. And if you set up the redirects properly, if you're not blocking things in any specific way, then I would imagine that this is something that is processed within a week or so. Even for, I don't know, medium-sized website, it should be a fairly straightforward move just from one subdomain to another. Moving between domains is a little bit trickier. Moving or kind of splitting or merging websites, that's a lot trickier. But this kind of move from one version to another version is usually totally unproblematic. And it's also something where if it were to take a little bit longer, it doesn't change anything for the user, because they would click on the old link and just end up on the new page. And it would all just work. So I think this is totally unproblematic and probably something that's easily doable. The main thing I would think about here, though, is that this is always like a site move kind of situation where you have a lot of work that's involved. So I would kind of consider, like, what are you really trying to do by moving like this? What is kind of the problem that you're trying to fix? Because it might be that you do all of this stuff, and essentially everything is the same in the end if you get it right. But if everything is the same in the end, why are you even doing it? So that's kind of the direction I would look at there. Yeah, and Michael just asked the same question as well, kind of like, why would you do this? I could imagine there might be situations where you have a CDN where you need to do that, to have kind of a separate host name. But if there's no strong technical reason to do it, I would just keep it as is. I have a question about local rankings. So I don't know if I can help with local things. Let's see. My client had extremely good local pack presence for important search term they target until a couple of months ago when the rankings fell off a cliff. I noticed there was another Google My Business listing for their business. I feel you probably need to go to the Google My Business help forum for that, because I really don't have any insight on the Google My Business side. I don't know, Nathan, I think you're here.
I am, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I have been there and tried that. It seems a very specific case, so I thought I'd try here too.
OK.
But if it's not your area, and I did wonder, I'm not sure where that leaves me. But
yeah, I don't really have any insight or any connections on the Google My Business side. So it's something where I really can't help out that much. But I think they also have some kind of live support as well, either by chat or by phone. So that might be an option to try there.
OK, thank you, John.
Sure. Let's see. Wanted to know whether the indexing or crawling is impacted if there are CAPTCHAs presented to avoid scraping. My website has a strict CAPTCHA policies on these directory pages. The whole purpose for these pages is to make sure that the pages are crawled and indexed. However, do the CAPTCHA slow the process down? So Googlebot doesn't fill out any CAPTCHAs. Even if there are Google-based CAPTCHAs, we don't fill them out. So that's something where if the CAPTCHA needs to be completed in order for the content to be visible, then we would not have access to the content. If, on the other hand, kind of the content is available there without essentially needing to do anything, and the CAPTCHA is just shown on top, then usually that would be fine. What I would do to test is use in Search Console the inspect URL tool and fetch those pages and see what comes back. On the one hand, the visible page to make sure that matches the visible content, and the HTML that is rendered there to make sure that that includes the content that you want to have indexed. So that's kind of the approach I would take there. From a policy point of view, we're OK with situations where you serve us the full content and you require a CAPTCHA on the user side. So if you need to do that slightly differently for Googlebot or maybe other search engines than you would for the average user, from our point of view, that's fine. Can an author write an article on site A and then write another article on the same topic on site B? The content will not be duplicated and will be unique, but the topic is the same. Also, site A and site B are under the same company. I don't see an issue with this. So from Google's point of view, we don't have any guidelines on where people can write and what kind of content they can create. So if people are creating content on multiple sites, then go for it. I think that's perfectly fine. From a practical point of view, what I've seen, I don't know if we have this in any guidelines or anything, but what I've sometimes seen is people tend to have a kind of like a profile page for themselves where they kind of collect all the information, all the things that they do. And pointing to something like your author homepage or profile page, or however you want to call that, is a good way to make sure that search engines understand that this is all the same person. To understand that this is kind of like a person with this name, and they're writing here, they're writing here, they're writing here. Kind of having that collection, that link back to your, I don't know, your homepage or whatever you choose. OK, I became muted. OK, whoops. I have no idea when I became muted, but OK. Let's see. Maybe I'll go back a little bit and see how much it was in the recording. Yeah, so talking about profiles. So I think having a shared location for your author homepage, I think that makes sense. It's not something that we have in our policies and our guidelines that you must do that, but it makes it a little bit easier for us to understand this is all the same person. So that's kind of the one thing I would watch out for. But writing on multiple sites, on the same topic, on different topics, whatever, is totally up to you. Definitely no limits from our side. I manually submit links of each article after publishing, and usually the pages get indexed within a few hours. At most, it takes a day for indexing. Currently, about 60 articles have been indexed this way. However, on the 15th of September, I published 4 articles with just the intro text and submitted them for indexing, hoping to update the articles the following day. Since this day, those 4 articles, let's see, plus any article posted afterwards have not been indexed by Google. Could the 4 articles posted with thin content have triggered this? No, I don't think that would be related. In general, the thing to watch out for when kind of publishing thin content is sometimes it takes a little bit longer for us to recrawl the page and to pick up the new version of the content there. So I would try to avoid doing that on a regular basis. But sometimes it happens that you update an article and you expand it over time. And we will try to pick that up over time. With regards to kind of like 4 articles resulting in no new content being picked up from that website, I don't see that as something that would be related. So from my point of view, I wouldn't assume those 4 articles are kind of the reason for Google to be reluctant with indexing. The one thing I did see in this question is you're manually submitting all of the links of every article after publishing. From my point of view, that kind of points into the direction that Google is already reluctant in picking up content from your website. And usually that reluctance comes from us not being sure of the quality of the website overall. So that's something where those 4 articles are probably not pulling down the overall quality of your website, but maybe like the overall picture that you have painted so far is something that is making us a little bit nervous and a little bit pickier. And that is resulting in us maybe not indexing all content as quickly as we could. And usually what happens is if you have really fantastic content, then we will go off and crawl your website regularly all the time. You don't need to manually submit things to make them indexable. So that would be kind of my suggestion there, to kind of take a step back and think about your website's quality overall, rather than to kind of fixate on those 4 articles that were submitted that one time. Does Google prefer micro-niche websites over macro-niche websites? I don't know exactly what you mean with micro-niche and macro-niche. My general recommendation is to make fewer websites and make them stronger. So I don't know if that's a macro-niche or something else. But kind of the idea of making very small websites on a very specific topic, I think that's OK. But it means that these websites tend not to be very strong overall, because you're not building value over time. You're basically putting out this one tiny piece of information on one website. And then it takes a long time for us to figure out, well, actually, this website has good content overall. Whereas if we had one very strong website and you added another article to it, then we would say, well, this website is really strong already. And, oh, look, there's something new. We'll go and pick that up as quickly as possible and show that as visibly as possible. And then among all of the 200 ranking signals, which are the most important? I don't like to rank ranking signals, so I can't give you an answer there. And kind of the other small thing there is we've kind of moved away from the over 200 ranking signals number, because it feels like even having a number like that is kind of misleading, in the sense that, oh, Google has a spreadsheet with all of the ranking signals, and they can just sort them by importance and tell me which ones they are. And that's definitely not the case. Like a lot of these things just take into account so many different things. You can't just isolate them out. Cool. OK, wow. Running low on time already. So maybe I'll take some more live questions, and we can extend a little bit afterwards as well to make sure all of the live questions are kind of handled. Let's see. John, I think you were just raising your hand. If you're still here.
I'm good. You answered my posted question. Thank you.
Oh, cool. All right. That was fast. Vincent.
Hi. You've already answered one of my questions, but I've got another one for you. It's about EAT again. Sorry about this. So yeah, Google, recommends that. Sorry, I've got a call. That medical content should be written by clinicians. So, for example, if you have a page related to acne, does it make a difference if you get like a top dermatologist to someone with like who's got author profiles on a lot of medical journals, who've got a knowledge graph, who's got like a reputation in the community, these type of things, or if you get any general practitioner, does it make any in terms of ranking and SEO? Does it weight somehow? Or as long as they are qualified doctor, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I don't know if there would be a quantifiable difference, because it's also not something where we say it's a direct ranking factor that we say, oh, we look up the author and double check this and double check that. It's more something that kind of comes into play when we look at the bigger picture of the content of the website. So my feeling is, purely from an SEO point of view, it probably doesn't matter either way. From a kind of a long-term kind of being seen as an authority point of view, maybe it does make sense to have a stronger author who's associated with it. But I don't think you would see an SEO ranking difference if you pick this author or a different author.
OK, thank you.
Cool. Gnan, I think.
Hi.
Hi.
That's me. So my question is on Google for Jobs. We have jobs on our job posts on our website, and once we added the structured data, the job postings started to appear on Google for Jobs. But we also have some remote jobs, and when we looked at the queries in Search Console, we found that about 95% of them had the word remote or work from home or online. So only the people who are looking specifically for remote jobs were able to see our job posts. So we feel like we're missing out on a lot, especially because we have, in some cases, some unique job titles. So how do we overcome that and make it visible?
I don't know. It's hard to say, because I don't know the details of how Google Jobs pulls these together. But if you can give me some examples, then I'm happy to pass that on to the team, at least in the form of feedback, where you maybe kind of the things where you're seeing that people are searching for a job in general, and the remote options are just not bubbling up. Those kind of things. I think that would be useful for the team. I don't know if we have any specific guidelines on what you need to do there. I know some things changed around the policies of remote jobs for Google for Jobs, but I don't know the specifics. So if you want to kind of put something in the chat here, feel free. Or if you want to ping me on Twitter and give me some information there, that's also fine.
Sure.
Cool. Feti.
Hello, John.
Hi.
My question will be also about indexing and the indexing issues that we come across lately. We are running an international multi-language website, and on Google Search Console lately, in almost all of them, we come across this indexing issue. Generally, it takes a while, but in the reports we see discovered but not indexed. I tested some of them. We made sure that we have internal links from homepage on a number of articles. When we search for the H1 of that article, Google shows these articles or pages that has internal link. In the H version, it is visible. You can see the link, but when we submit it again, it still doesn't index. It pushes to discovered but not indexed. And finally, we had to share it on social media. Didn't help. And at the end, we have updated the content fully and published, and it came back. But it is happening lately too much since the beginning of August, say after all this June, July core update season. And another thing about indexing we came across is that we publish articles about some events, sports events. And Google again, sees either says not indexed or discovered not indexed. But when we search for part of this content, we find the old articles from 2018, related topic, not exactly but similar. Google updated H1 description, all the content, but the link is old link, old URL. And yeah, that's the question. What can we do to solve this issue, or is it an issue, or is it some part of the update that Google finds similar content and tries to update to one link, let's say?
It's hard to tell from your question if the content is actually indexed, if it's just reported incorrectly in Search Console, or if it's actually not indexed.
There are cases. In one case, it's not indexed by Google. It is possible to see in Yandex, Bing. It is possible to see the anchors that we have internal links. It is possible to see the links in those internal links, but content is definitely not indexed.
OK. Offhand, I mean, I don't know your website, so I don't know how much content it is there, but it sounds like it's a lot of content. And offhand, what tends to happen is if we're not really sure about the quality of the website, then we might just not crawl and index all of the content. And then it can happen that you publish new things, and we understand that they exist. We discover them, but we end up not indexing them because we're not 100% sure how much content we need to have indexed from this website. And usually the main approach to try to solve this is to try to find ways to increase the quality of the content overall. Sometimes that means removing some old things and kind of like making sure that everything that you publish is really fantastic. That's, I think, the ideal situation to help in this direction, because if our systems are convinced of the quality of your website, they will crawl and index more. And it will try to pick up things as quickly as possible. Whereas if they're not 100% sure, then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It sounds a little bit like what you're seeing here. What you could also do in the meantime, perhaps, is if you have content that's replaced by new content that you provide, to set up redirects from the old versions to the new ones, so that if we should crawl the old pages, then we automatically get the new ones. And if users,
those are already redirected. All the old related content, or articles, URLs, are redirected to the latest one, but the latest URL is not indexed. One of the old ones is indexed and stays indexed, but content, title, description, everything changes.
Oh, OK. So in that case, we probably have indexed the new version, but we use the old URL. And that's something that happens with canonicalization. So with the canonicalization process, we understand there are multiple URLs on your website that show the same content, like the old one and the new one. The old one redirects to the new one, so it's definitely the same content. And we try to figure out which of these URLs to show in the search results. And that's something that we do use redirects for that. We also use internal links, external links, sitemap files, hreflang, all kinds of structured data annotations. All of these links that we find, we try to combine that and say, so many apply to the old version, so many apply to the new one. We will pick whichever one has the most points, essentially. And that's something where I suspect we're indexing the new one. We're just using the old URL. From a ranking point of view, it would rank exactly the same way. It's just the old URL that's being used to show in the search results.
OK, thank you very much.
Cool. OK, let me take a break here with the recording, and I'll get to the rest of you after we pause. Don't worry. If you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for sticking around so long to the end. If you'd like to join us live with one of the next Hangouts, feel free to jump on in. I'll post the links in the community section afterwards. And yeah, hope to see you all again in the future. All right, let me pause.